Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me for the Brahma Viharas chapter on compassion. Now, today I am offering a guided meditation designed to cultivate compassion for people we don't like. Arguably one of the more challenging practices of compassion, to offer compassion to people, well, and to use Buddhist psychology terminology, to offer compassion to our perceived enemies. Now, this phrase perceived enemies is quite important, and I'll address that for a few moments here. Why perceived enemies? Why do they use that word perceived? Well, according to Buddhist psychology, we never actually experience an enemy. We only ever actually experience our own discomfort. And we then project that discomfort out onto another being or another situation. Usually this discomfort arises when we're in a particular situation or we're in close proximity to somebody, and due to that proximity we feel comfort. And then we project that discomfort out onto that person and we think it's their fault. Somebody's uncomfortable, I know I'm uncomfortable, but I know it's not coming from me, it must be coming from them. And then we fight that person as if we were fighting our enemy, or we push that person away as if we were pushing against an enemy, but in fact we're actually pushing away our own discomfort, which is of course impossible because our discomfort is in our own body, our own mind, and our own heart. Now, when I mention this in presentations, I often get the question, well, what about those people who have really hurt me or harmed me? Aren't those my enemies? Now, it's true that that is the natural place we feel that tension. But if somebody, let's use the example of maybe somebody punched me in the jaw. Just an example, I haven't been punched since I was in high school. But somebody punched me in the jaw, and now I want to send that compassion. Now, of course, when I remember this person, I'm going to remember how bad that hurt and the embarrassment, the pain, and so forth. But there again, it's my own discomfort that I'm experiencing as a result of my recollection of the situation. So when a person has really transgressed against us, it just makes them a susceptible or a very likely hook for our projection. But at the end of the day, it's still our own discomfort that we're placing on that person or situation. And I often quote the great Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, the great sage, when he said, "All of the devils and demons in this world arise from the human heart. That is the only field in which the war should be fought." Pointing at this exact lesson there, that it's always our own discomfort that creates our experience of enemy. It's not the actual person or the situation. So that's why we say perceived enemy. And truly, that projection actually starts to break down when we do these practices on compassion, particularly sending compassion to those who we dislike. So this practice is done similarly to the previous practices we've done. If you've been with me before, you kind of know how this pattern goes already. I'll ring the bell, I'll guide us into the present moment. And we do that by hearing the sounds of the present moment, feeling the body and the breath. Sounds are always right now, physical sensations are always present moment experiences. So we use that to bring our attention and awareness to the here and now. And then we rest in that experience for just a moment or two. And then we offer compassion phrases, or phrases endowed with compassion. First, to our own heart, because we want to feel for ourselves how good this compassion feels. And then we offer this compassion to our perceived enemy. Now, when we go through it, the phrases, there are 5 or 6 phrases. When we offer them to our own heart, we'll move rather swiftly through them. It's a way of just checking in with compassion. When we offer it to the perceived enemy, we'll actually spend a minute or so visualizing or imagining what their life might look or feel like if that phrase was completely reflective of their life circumstance. And so we do that for maybe 10 or 12 minutes, and then we come back to the present moment, sounds, body, and breath, and then we're finished like that. Now, before all of this starts, it's suggested that we touch in with the human heart, the bodhicitta, it's called, the compassionate heart. And we can do this simply by recognizing how all beings want happiness and want to avoid suffering. In fact, that's our very birthright. As human beings, we are born into the condition in which we are striving towards happiness and pushing away discomfort. And we deserve that. As human beings, we all deserve that. Regardless of our actions, our behaviors, regardless of our belief systems, our ideologies, regardless of our sexual preferences or orientations, regardless of our economic situations, we all deserve happiness and deserve to be free from suffering. Now, one way of cultivating this bodhicitta, or allowing this bodhicitta to arise, is to contemplate that for a few moments, which we've just done. You can also really just turn on the news, see how many people are suffering in the world today. That's another way of contacting that compassion. Because as human beings, our hearts naturally resonate with the suffering of others. Now, you might just close down or shut down to suffering to others, but it's still a resonation. And these practices are helping us to break that habit of closing down, so we can actually hold space for another human being while they're in the middle of their suffering. Now, sometimes, particularly when we're offering compassion to a perceived enemy, we might get emotional. The practice might get what I call too hot. And I've given this example before, but it's worth giving multiple times. I call this the too hot circle. So the middle circle is the comfort zone. And when we're coming into the practice, sounds, body, breath, generally we're in the comfort zone. The second circle is the challenge zone. That's where all of the growth and learning happens in meditation, to be in the challenge zone. So oftentimes and ideally, we'll be in the comfort zone, challenge zone, back to the comfort zone, challenge zone, back to the comfort zone. When that's happening, you're actually growing, you're learning, you're evolving. Sometimes, however, we go into the too hot zone. And when that happens, you'll know it because you'll start crying, or you'll start having an emotional reaction. You might shut down or fall asleep. Actually, that can happen sometimes from the too hot zone. If that happens, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what to do there is just to come back, hear the sounds of the present moment, feel the body, bring yourself back to the comfort zone. So if that happens the first time, no problem, comfort zone, you're back, sounds, breath, body. Then, come back into the challenge zone and try again. If you go into the too hot zone again, that's it, you're finished. Even if you've only meditated for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe it's not as long as you wanted to, but if you go into the too hot zone more than once, it's a good idea to take a break and stop there. You don't want to keep pushing. because then we start to resist meditation in general, and that takes quite a lot of time to unravel when that type of habit starts. So comfort zone, challenge zone, that's really the ideal place to be there. Now, when we start working with perceived enemies, we don't want to use somebody who really hurt us. We don't want to use a perceived enemy that really wronged us or gave us some sort of harm. But use somebody for whom there's a bit of discomfort towards, but not somebody who you really hate. A politician might be good, unless you really hate that politician. Then, using a politician can work well, because generally they haven't inflicted pain or physical harm on us. Sometimes, yes, we might have that relationship with a politician, but the masses don't. And so that can work well for a compassion practice like this. Now, it's not expected that after a week, 2 weeks of working with compassion, you're going to be a compassionate spiritual master. I wish it was that quick and easy. But these practices are very gradual, very slow working. You can start light here, but you might still be working with these compassion practices months and months later, and there will be time to work with the people who really wronged you. Then, when you become more comfortable with the practice, when you become accustomed to how the practice feels, then you can start working with more heavier, more challenging people like that. Okay. Now, I want to read a writing from Albert Einstein, of all people. Not somebody who we normally consider to be a spiritual leader or a particularly compassionate human being, but it turns out he was quite compassionate and quite wise. So here is Albert Einstein on compassion. A human being is a part of the whole, called to us universe. A part limited by time and space, he experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our own personal desires and to affection for only a few persons closest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Now, Albert Einstein was also known for saying, if you want to understand the universe, you must see the universe free from perspective. And so these practices, because when we experience a perceived enemy or we experience a stranger, we're experiencing that from our perspective. And in fact, almost all of us experience the world from our perspective, right? If you want to understand the universe, experience it free from perspective. Now, these meditations are really helping us to break down our habit of experiencing the world from me in here and all of you out there. It's taking away that perspective. And so I think that's all I want to say here. Enjoy meditation on compassion for the perceived enemy. So allowing the body, mind, and heart to rest. Just coming into this present moment experience. Now ring the sound of the bell. Rest your awareness on the sound of the bell. Allow the decay of the bell to guide your awareness into silence. And while resting in the silence of the present moment, you might also notice the sounds of the present moment. Not labeling or defining any particular sound, but just listening to the texture of the soundscape of the present moment. And I'll ring the bell again. Allow the decay of the bell to guide your awareness into silence. And while resting in the silence of the present moment, allowing awareness to include and embrace any sounds which might be arising, not focusing on any one sound in particular, but noticing the entire field of sound and silence. And in addition to the sounds and silence of the present moment, bringing attention and awareness to the sensations of the feet against the mat or the floor. Sensations of clothing against the legs. The weight of the body against the cushion or chair, mat or floor. Noticing the sensations of clothing against the back. The sensations of hands resting against the body or touching each other. The arms resting against the body. The shoulders rising and falling with each breath. And you might also notice sensations arising from the back of the neck, the sides of sensations arising from the back of the head and the ears. You might notice sensations arising in the cheeks of the face, the lips and the nose, the eyes and the forehead. noticing any sensations arising from the top of the head. And while resting there with the silence and sound and the sensations arising throughout the body, bringing attention to the breath as it enters and leaves the nose. Noticing the breath touching the back of the throat. The rib cage expanding and contracting with each breath. The rising and falling of the abdomen as you inhale and exhale. You might also notice the back moving out as you breathe in as you breathe out. The shoulders rising and falling with each breath. And so we'll rest right there for a few moments, maintaining open, spacious awareness on the sounds and silence, body and breath, and just rest. And now we'll begin offering these very precious phrases of compassion, first to our own heart. Visualizing or imagining what our life might look or feel like if these phrases were completely reflective of our life circumstance. May I be free from suffering. May I be free from disturbance and harm. May I accept things just as they are. May I experience the world accepting me just as I am. May I serve whatever arises. And now, while breathing in and breathing out, allow a visualization to arise in your mind's eye, visualizing a perceived enemy. Now again, we don't want to use somebody who really hurt us here, particularly if we're new to this practice. But visualizing someone for whom there's clear tension towards. And if you can see this person clearly in your mind's eye, that's good. If visualization is difficult, you can just say this person's name a few times, getting a feel for this person's presence. And we'll begin offering these very precious gifts of compassion to our perceived enemy's heart, as if we were offering them the most rare and precious gift. With each phrase, visualizing or imagining what their life would look or feel like if each phrase was completely reflective of their life circumstance. May you be free from suffering. May you be free from disturbance and harm. May you accept things just as they are. May you experience the world accepting you just as you are. May you serve whatever arises. May you be free from suffering. May you be free from disturbance and harm. May you accept things just as they are. May you experience the world accepting you just as you are. May you serve whatever arises. and breathing in and breathing out. Allowing any visualizations to arise in your mind's eye to dissolve. You can let those fade back into the open, spacious awareness from which they came. Bringing attention and awareness to the sounds of the present moment. And again, not labeling or defining any particular sound or set of sounds. Simply listening to the texture as each sound arises and falls. While resting with the silence and sound of the present moment, bringing attention and awareness to the feet against the mat or the floor. Noticing clothing resting against the legs, the weight of the body against the cushion or chair, mat or floor. There might be sensations of clothing against the back. You might notice the hands resting against the body or touching each other, the arms resting against the body, sensations of clothing resting against the shoulders. There might also be sensations arising from the back of the neck, the sides of the neck, sensations arising from the ears, the back of the head. Noticing any sensations arising from the face, including the eyes and the forehead. Noticing any sensations arising from the top of the head. And while resting there with the sounds and silence and the sensations arising throughout the body, bringing attention to the breath as it enters and leaves the nose. Noticing the breath touching the back of the throat. You might notice the rib cage expanding and contracting with each breath, the rising and falling of the abdomen as you inhale and exhale. Noticing the back moving out as you breathe in as you breathe out. The shoulders rising and falling with each breath. And so we'll rest right there for a few moments, resting in open, spacious awareness of the sounds and silence, body and breath, and just rest. Well, thank you for joining me on this to me, very moving meditation practice, offering and cultivating compassion for not only ourselves, but for people we don't like. It can be very challenging, as I mentioned, but absolutely worth the effort. Now, I mentioned yesterday that I'd be talking about a Pink Floyd song, and I'm not going to have time to get to that today. But tomorrow will be a talk, and I'll go through this Pink Floyd song. It's a song called "On the Turning Away." Beautiful, beautiful song about compassion for the entire world. And so we'll be talking about this song, looking at it as if it were a meditation practice. And then we'll be talking about other practices which allow us to move into cultivating compassion for the entire world. Those practices will be a departure from this format. I'm going to be doing a practice called Just Like Me, which was penned by the great spiritualist Ram Dass, and then a Tibetan practice called Tonglen, which is quite an extraordinary practice on compassion as well. So we have all of that to look forward to. Now, I keep mentioning the current world climate and what a beautiful, wonderful opportunity it is to cultivate compassion. One of the things you might do the news, or I read the news on CNN app on my phone, and then what I've been doing is I'll see somebody's story about coronavirus, or I'll see the amount of people who have perished and so forth, and I'll send the phrases to them. May you be free from suffering. May you be free from disturbance and harm. So then it's not just a name, it's not just a number. The idea here is to recognize the humanity behind each statistic. Each number represents a family that has been changed and altered in ways that we can't imagine, because everybody relates to death differently. Everybody comprehends that experience differently, but we can ascertain for sure that those lives have been deeply, deeply affected and changed. And so recognizing that and feeling in our heart their heart, that's compassion. Holding space for that connection, that's compassion. We may never, and hopefully we won't ever, get another opportunity like this to cultivate compassion on a global level. So although it might not be the most uplifting, it is actually, I find it quite uplifting, but it might be a little more challenging than just turning on Netflix and watching a movie, but it's worth it. I promise it's worth it. And that's going to bring about some real evolutionary growth if we can all do this. So that's all I think I want to say today. Stay safe, stay clean, stay healthy, wear your masks, practice your social distancing, and we will get through all of this together. Thank you. I'll ring the bell properly. Here it is. There we are.